know that we all gonna be alright. We gon' make it through if it takes us all night. No matter what the odds may bring our way, I can see the blessings coming our way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Blessings on blessings, yeah. I can see the blessings coming our way. Our way, our way. Blessings on blessings, yeah. I can see the blessings coming our way.
Hey guys, it's
Drake
Ambry, and you're tuned into
Worth the Wait. Shout out to all our waiters.
Hey.
I don't know if everybody here is waiting, but we appreciate you for tuning in. Make sure, tell this on our shows, but if you listen to us on the podcast app, if you leave reviews on the show, we really, 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 really love that. Like 5-star reviews, they mean a lot to us and help us to grow the show and grow the platform. Also, subscribe on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. That will mean a lot to us. And just talking to Bree, had a great idea. You want to talk to him about like writing in and like what that could be like?
Yeah. So with Relationship Restored, we have our 3 channels or playlists. Shows. There we go. We have our 3 shows. Real love scenario, where you could be male, female, doesn't matter, whatever your real love scenario is, you can write in and get real-time advice from Dre and Rhonda. And then for the girls, we have Help a Girl Out, which is specifically for women, whether single, dating, married, whatever, to just talk about whatever they're going through and to get real life advice on those scenarios. And then we have Worth the Wait. And I was like, why not make our Worth the Wait write-in specifically for individuals who are either waiting or have a desire to wait for marriage and going through what that looks like, navigating a relationship while waiting, and all the things, that just there are to talk about when it comes to waiting. So this is specifically for those of you out there who want to wait.
Yeah, it's a platform. I'll say specifically, like if you have other questions, please write in about like relationship stuff, because obviously we dealt with a lot of relationship stuff.
Yeah.
But if you are somebody who's interested in waiting, please, feel free to write in, because that's something that we did deal with. That's something that we worked our way through. Yeah. And the show's called Worth the Wait for a reason, because we waited for marriage. So we'd love to be able to help with that. But today we're going to we talked about counseling and stuff before and past videos, but I think they were always geared more towards like either couples counseling or like pre-marriage counseling.
Yeah.
But this is more about like individual counseling. And I think that that's important also to like understand like when you need individual versus like couple, and when that change happens. We've done couples counseling, we've done premarital counseling. We've done counseling outside of premarital counseling, which is couples counseling. And I think for the most part, we have been given the tools. Like I said, like I tell everybody, counseling is for the tools. It's like if you have a hole in your roof at home, just going to Home Depot and getting a hammer, nails, and wood ain't gonna fix the hole. It's giving you the tools to then take home and then implement and use. So we got a lot of the tools that we needed to help our relationship through our premarital counseling and counseling outside of that. But sometimes you need individual counseling because it doesn't make sense, for instance, in Bree's perspective, in our couples counseling to be digging up like her trauma with like not having her dad around and how that affected her, or, some of her relationships when it came to cheating and things like that. And I think there was a few things that triggered it for us that she realized like, okay, like individual counseling like might do me some good outside of the couples counseling. And I would, let Bree talk about those things. But for me, I think number one was just kind of seeing that. No, I'll let you talk about it and let you kind of say what led up to like you deciding that individual counseling was something that you wanted to go to, because I know it was a few different events, but I think it'll be better if you explain that.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is, couples counseling is great. Like Dre said, it gives you the tools to be able to deal with problems when they arise or when certain situations happen, how to deal with it in a very healthy way. Yeah. So we never necessarily had issues within our relationship that we were going to counseling for. It was more preparing us for issues that could come. And with our post-marriage counseling, it was to the point where the counselor told us, like, you guys are good. Like, we you're kind of wasting your money and time at this point doing couples therapy, because you guys have all the tools in the toolbox to deal with life as it happens. However, most of the things that we were dealing with, or that could have been like, oh, this is something maybe we could talk about, it all stemmed with me. It was always me and how I was reacting to things, me and my, letting my peace be stolen from things around me. It was never Dre having like personal issues or things popping up in his past that was making our relationship hard. It was always me. So our counselor said, you guys are great as a couple. You got this. Dre is a phenomenal husband, a great leader of your household. He's not going to steer you wrong. You guys are good. However, let's spend this time digging deeper into Bree and her situations. And so I started solo counseling with that counselor, and I stopped the sessions because nothing was really I couldn't find things to unpack, because I think I did a good job of unpacking during us preparing for marriage. And then even in the couples counseling that we did do with that counselor, it was all stemmed around me, but we had discussed those things and moved on. So I was in a space where I told her, I was like, I don't know, like when we get on the sessions, I really don't know what to even like talk about, because like we weren't dealing with anything. At the time, the drinking stuff wasn't an issue because I had done a good job thus far, cutting back and like being more aware. So I stopped my sessions. Then we had a scenario. If you didn't watch our last episode, go and watch that one about the Mexico trip and the drinking situation. That happened, and that was a few months removed from therapy. And I was like, okay, I need to do therapy. I need to get down to the real reason of why alcohol is a crutch for me. Why when I, drink to a certain point, I kind of lose logic and I like revert back to this old, as Dre calls me, CB, this Cleveland Bree that like has no peace, that's so angry, that's mad, that is like overly emotional. So that was the original reason for me wanting to go back into therapy. But also, if you guys follow me on Instagram, you know that I have been talking recently about how I discovered or have determined that I have oh my God, imposter syndrome. And I have an issue with accepting my level of success and accepting, like, even, sometimes I feel bad for the amount that people pay me for what I do. And like, I have this hard acceptance of like, but me, do I really deserve that? Like, am I really worthy of that? Like, I have an issue with my level of success. So I was like, I want a woman, because our past counselor was a male. And I was like, I want a woman of color, someone who is married, but doesn't have like the cookie cutter traditional, like, journey of getting to where she is now, like someone who has struggled very similar to like me. So it was very important for me to find that in a counselor. What I did was I first reached out to my friend group and I said, hey guys, I want to start therapy back up, looking for a woman of color.
I want you to hold on to that because you're getting into something very important. But I wanted to just add, before you get into like how you found your therapist, I want to add one reason that I suggested it to you, because there was something that I told Bree that I was like, I feel like you need to like get an individual therapist. And it wasn't because, if you watched our last episode on the Mexico situation and the drinking, like I knew that she had unresolved things, but one thing that we're big on and I always tell people is that you shouldn't be your partner's therapist. Like, and I realized that a lot of times when I was having conversation with Bree and I was speaking with Bree, that she was giving me all her raw feelings and emotions, and I could not handle that because I am the one who's with her every day. I'm her husband. Like, I take the things that she says as being real. And sometimes she'll say things when she hasn't even worked it out necessarily in her head yet. So she would tell me things prematurely, and then she'll come back a week later or 2 weeks later and say, oh, this is how I actually feel about this now. But it's like, oh, you already said that thing to me, so that's in my head now how you feel. So even if you come back and say, that's not how I feel anymore, that's what you said to me. And it could have been something that maybe it even hurt my feelings or something like that. But I realized, I'm like, all right, you have a lot of thoughts in your head that you are trying to deal with and figure out things. And although I'm here for you and I love you and I want to be your sounding board, I can't take all your raw feelings and emotions. Mainly because like I said, that those impact me, but also I'm not a therapist, and also I can't word things in the way that make the most sense, that may make the most sense to you. But also what we learned too is that some things you learned at therapy was things that I have been saying, but coming from a different party who's non-biased, it means something different and she receives it different. So that was some of the main reasons that I suggested it to her, because I was like, yo, I can't handle every single thought that's going through your head that's raw, but you need to give it to somebody who can help you formulate it, and then you can come to me with a complete thought and say, hey Dre, this is what I'm feeling, versus like, here are 10 things I think these are what I'm feeling, but help me work these things out as I'm trying to figure it out. So
and also it's like emotionally draining to be the person who's like my soundboard, who every time I don't know why I feel away and I'm just like basically word vomiting all these things to him. That's a lot to deal with on a regular basis. And then also when I'm looking for an answer and then he gives me answers, but because he's my husband, I'm not able to receive them the same way. So then it's like essentially he's wasting his time and energy because then I'm not receiving it anyways. So even though I'm very lucky to have somebody who is like, I call him the relationship guy because he always knows the right thing to say and what to do. That's putting too much on him as my partner to be like, oh, hey, and by the way, I also want you to wear the hat of my therapist. So the way that I went about finding someone is I always believe to first ask the people around you that love you, that you can trust, and that would not wouldn't share information of someone who they, don't fully believe is a great person. So I first got referrals from my friend group. They sent about like 4 different people. And then I asked a few individuals, Rhonda from Real Love Scenario, and just a few other people I thought of. And I put together like a interview week where I just did calls or exchange emails with people and just got quotes and things to kind of figure out who I wanted to speak with or who I wanted to work with. So Lisa, which will include her contact information in the description, she was my 6th person that I spoke to. I had one more interview after her, but I fell in love with her during our free consultation to the point where I canceled the last interview.
So going into that interview, did you know exactly what you wanted out of a therapist, or was it more it was just going to be a feel thing for you?
I did know what I wanted in terms of like the ideal fit. Like I said, color, a woman. I wanted her to be married. I wanted her to be like spiritual in some sort, way, shape, or form, but also have like a scientific background. So it really blew it out the water for me when she was like, I'm a neurologist, because then I was like, oh, that's amazing. And then she also believes in God. So it was like the perfect combination of science and faith for me, because I didn't want someone who was super religious and didn't think of the logical scientific aspects of like how our brain works. And then I didn't want someone who was all science and no belief and faith in like, a higher power.
You didn't want somebody to just say, pray about it.
Yeah, no. I need to understand why I am how I am. So the thing that made me go with her, 5 minutes into the call, I was like, immediately, yes, was that she, instead of like interviewing me in a sense of like, well, what do you want out of this? Why are you coming to me? She more so asked me off jump, like what my past has looked like. Like, have you ever done counseling before? What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? What is your like main thing that you're struggling with? Like, it wasn't about her service in particular. Like, she didn't make me feel like she was trying to sell me on her service. She made me feel like she wanted to ensure that I knew what I wanted out of therapy and that she was the person to get me that result. And so that was amazing, because that's how I am with my clients. I don't care about whether or not you have a budget if you don't know or have a goal in mind of what you're actually trying to do.
Yeah.
If you're not confident in what you're wanting to do, I can't help you become confident in that thing. The thing has to be there in the first place. Otherwise, I'm going to send you packing and say, you need to first figure out what you really want to do and then come back to me. For sure. Because I can't help you if you can't help yourself. So that was perfect. And then when I explained to her the 2 major things that I was struggling with, which was one, understanding the logic behind my drinking problem, that I've done a great job dealing with it on my own, but I think that I could do an even better job if I knew where the issue comes from, like what unresolved issues I have that make when I get drunk it be like catastrophe, and whether or not, you know, I should just give it up completely or find a healthy balance. The second thing was, I've never been happier per se or more content and secure in my life than I have in the last 5 years. But yet I always have this like fear of like not understanding how I'm going to get to where I ultimately want to be. And what I mean by that is, you know I want children. We know we want children. However, I'm terrified of getting pregnant. I'm terrified of everything not being in place by the time I get pregnant. I'm terrified of still having to run my business like quote unquote full time and not being able to be fully there as like a mom. There's just all these real random, very small, insignificant issues that I seem to create such stress around or worry so much about. And I knew I wanted someone who could step in and almost be like a life coach, because I wanted that healthy work-life balance, which I think I have. I think I have a good work-life balance, but mentally I struggle with like anxiety on a daily basis of overthinking and trying to over prepare and not having faith that everything's going to work out how it should. And it's like I have an issue when I don't see the exact roadmap. So if I know I'm here and I want to go here, unless I see every stop along that way, I don't feel that there is possible, which is silly because since I was 19, I used to write things and I would come up with plans and I would set goals and I would do things. And sometimes I didn't know exactly how I would get there, but I would always end up there because the intent of getting there was always the same. I didn't need to know every exit and every stop and every play. I just knew I needed to constantly move forward. So I don't know where that has changed for me, but it's something that I can tell as I get older I'm struggling with. So those were the two things. Once I spoke to her about those things and she was able to shed light and immediately said things to me that were more helpful than, you know, counselors that I've worked with for years or months, I was like, oh yeah, girl, you got the juice. You are it. And I like that she was super personable. One thing that I would say is if you're new into going to therapy, it would be helpful to find someone who has a private practice, meaning they're not under a company. They do this personally. They set their own schedule. They set their own hours. They work from home, because what they'll do is they'll open up their calendar to you in a way that's far different than someone who works for an organization and has like X amount of, you know, maybe the only hours that you can get with them are Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Like she figures out your life and then figures out what days and times are going to make the most sense for you and to really set your week up to be in the right headspace to take on the things that you're struggling with. And then she gives you access to text her, FaceTime, call, like whenever. And that's something that was really important to me because we had a situation where we were out of town. I was dealing with something in the moment and I text Lisa and was like, I'm dealing with X, Y, and Z right now. I really want to make sure we talk about this on our next session. I'm going to just send you like a voice memo explaining what happened. And she texts back right away. Yep, perfect. If you need a call, you can call me as well. And just out of respect for her time, because she wouldn't have charged me for that phone call, I was like, let me just send the voice memo. But she's very personable and I like that. I feel comfortable with her. She's also local. So if I want to do in person, she's already invited me to come to her home at her at-home office. So she's just amazing. So that's what I did to find the person. The only other thing that I thought was important too was cost, because we are full-time entrepreneurs. We don't have like a health insurance package that covers for therapy. So we knew we had to pay out of pocket, and she was at like a perfect price point for us. A lot of the other people were a lot higher on an hourly basis. So I just, ran it by Dre and was like, is this something we can afford to add to the budget? And he was like, yep. And we locked it in. I'm not going to say her price because depending on when you're watching this, her prices can change. So I don't want to mislead anybody, but I'll say that she is affordable in comparison to a lot of the other people who are out there with private practices. Once I found the person. I remember I went to Dre and I was like, oh
she
my
was so
God.
excited.
I was like, I love her. Like, I love her so much. I'm so excited. I booked my first session. And my goal was to go into the new year with a therapist. And so my first session was on January 3rd. So I was like super excited about going into the new year with that.
I think that that's important though too, is that the level of excitement going into it, like her mindset going into it, was something that I want people to have. Like when going into therapy, it's like you're obviously going to therapy to explore, to figure out, to discover, and to ultimately gain perspective. So I think it's important that you see it in a positive light and see it as something to celebrate, because you're going to learn some things about yourself and you're ultimately bettering yourself. It's like if you go with a trainer to a gym, like you're shaping your body to be better and getting a better look, to be more attractive to yourself and, you know, to those around you and things like that. So I think that mindset, as you would go into anything that you're excited about discovering or growing or doing more, you should take into therapy. And I think that that's important, that you had that mindset, like you were genuinely excited to talk to her, mainly because she found the right person, but also because she was discovering, she knew she would start to unlock and get some answers to why she felt the way she felt about some things.
Yeah, and it's just crazy the level of greatness you can unlock when you truly know yourself and like you know how to be the best version of yourself.
For sure.
And so what I dislike about, you know, what people think of when you think of therapy is that like you need therapy to fix you. Like you should go to therapy if something is wrong, and that is not the case. I was talking to my mom and I was like, it's crazy. Therapy should literally be a requirement from like the age of 6 and for the rest of your life, because we all deal with mental issues, like mental, emotional things in our life that we just think, oh, this is just how I am, versus understanding why you're that way and how much better your life could be and how much more free you could feel if you dealt with these things that are getting in your way, whether it's fear, anxiety, anger, trauma. There's just, even the most perfect person has so much to learn about themselves, and you can't do anything better, I say, than to have an unbiased person who their specialty is being able to hear, listen, and then give advice. And I don't mean the therapists who say, and how does that make you feel? You know, like that's a different situation. Lisa's never asked me how something has made me feel. She's more about logic and like getting to the root of the feeling, not how did you feel, but why did you feel this way and what things came to mind when you thought that thought. And it just helps you really learn who you are. And like I said, just be the best version of yourself. So anyways, what happened next was on our first session, before we got on the session, she had me fill out a form that just asked a bunch of like life questions, asked about like our relationship, my business, the things I really want to work on, the things that I feel I struggle with, the things I feel I'm like really great at, and just things to get to know me better. So once we got on that first session, one of the questions that she asked me, because we realized that she was like, you have a worry issue. You choose to worry over things that you should not worry about at all, because you have seen time and time again that like when you worry about a specific thing, like one of my worries was with Dre and I being full-time entrepreneurs, how could we possibly start a family when we never know what our life is going to look like month to month? Like that's scary. And she was like, how long have you guys been doing this full time? And I was like, over 6 years. She was like, and what have you guys done year by year? And I was like, make more money. And she was like, so why do you feel if year after year after year after year, it has been proven that you guys continue to make more money, why are you worrying about the option or the possibility of not making money when nothing has ever happened that would give you the right to have a worry like that?
Yeah.
And she was like, as a professional worrier, is what she calls me. She was like, all you do is create anxiety and fear that blocks you from just doing what you know you're supposed to be doing and doing it aggressively and with joy and with peace. And it's just taking up space and energy that gives no benefit to your life. Like, it's just silly. So we went through like how to kind of work on that. But then she asked me, she was like, in the last 5 years, what was the worst year that you experienced and why was it the best? Or did I say best? What was the best?
You said what was the worst?
She said, what was the best year and why? And I said, I was like, I'm really bad with like timelines, like knowing what year is what year. So I was like, I'll say the year that we got married. And for obvious reasons, like we had a bomb wedding. I loved planning it. It was so exciting. That was a great year. And we were able to like not work for like a whole month and like our income didn't change, which was great. We were like, so I was like, I'll say that month. And or that year. Then she said, now what was the worst year out of the last 5 years? And I was like, I really thought, and I was like, I don't have one. I was like, not even a month is coming to my mind. Like, I don't have one. And she was like, and you're worrying about what? Like, she's like, an average person, if you say in the last 5 years what was the worst year, they can immediately say this year because this has happened to me. She said, you are very blessed and you know that. You have nothing that you have to complain about. She was like, you're even a very positive person from the sense of your outlook in life. Like you realize and appreciate all the little things. So you as a person feel very blessed and feel very lucky. However, you still have this like optimistic like personality trait that comes out when it comes to like your relationship, where Dre will be very, is optimistic the wrong word? I'm pessimistic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Optimistic is a great outlook. Like positive thinking.
So she was like, Dre is optimistic in the way that he communicates and talks about the future, where you have a very optimistic, why do I keep saying that? Pessimistic outlook, where your thoughts about the future is you thinking of all the possible things that could go wrong and all the worries. And she's like, which isn't adding up, because on a daily basis, you know, you're very aware of how blessed you are and you are aware of the great situation that you're in, yet you continue to choose for some reason to be pessimistic and worry about these things. So that was what our first like series, our first session was about. And in that, I just learned a little bit more about like the type of person I was. And then our second one dove deeper.
I just like to say that in that moment, like the things that she discovered really impact our relationship. Like I used to always tell her, even from the beginning, I'm like, you're so negative. Like you're such a negative thinker. Like all these things like will compound and every year will get better and better and better. And the things that she said she wanted, it's like, oh, I want a bigger place. We got a new bigger place that's nice, that she loved. We got the dream car that she wanted. And like we would do all these things, but she'll still just kind of be like, never seem like truly satisfied, or always be worried that something wasn't right or something wasn't going to go right or something was going to go wrong at some point. So her being able to discover that in therapy, I think was a huge thing. And I feel like it was something that, like I may have said throughout the past, like, oh, are you always thinking negatively, or like you need to be more optimistic, or you need to be more positive. And it's like I would say all these things, but actually hearing it from a therapist and somebody who can explain it like she did in the logical format really helped her out. And I think that one thing that I've learned with her when it comes to worriers is that they do well with hearing what they're supposed to hear, or hearing I guess the truth or facts from experts. Like Bree will have like a health issue, but if she talks to a nurse or a doctor, I can say the same thing. It's not a big of a deal. But if she talks to a nurse or a doctor, then she'll be like, oh, okay. Like that makes sense. Yeah. Or like I was a property manager. She'll be looking at stuff. And I'm like, that's not a thing, or that won't work. She won't listen to me. But she'll go to somebody, and if they say who's a property manager or a real estate agent, and they're like, oh yeah, that's the thing, she'll be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And it's like, I was a whole property manager, but I think for worriers, even more, like having somebody of credibility that helps ease their mind, because their biggest thing with worriers is their fear of not knowing. And dealing with an expert to them is the closest to knowing, because that person has experience and expertise in a particular space. So if she has a question about pregnancy or her body or birth control pills, she may not know the future, but dealing with a doctor is her closest thing to, okay, this is as close to fact as I'm possibly going to get.
Yeah, like my poor mom, I could Google all the things that I ask her, but because she's a nurse, it's like, no, I need my mom to tell me, because then I'll trust it because she's a nurse. Yeah, I don't know. So, anywho,
second session.
The second session was about the scenario that I mentioned when we were out of town. I had like I don't want to say panic attack, because it wasn't a panic attack, but that's the closest thing I can think of that, right? Like,
yeah,
it was weird. Like Dre's never seen me like that. He was like really worried. Like, wait,
it's like a real bad funk. Like,
it was like dark. It was
a dark cloud just came over.
We were in the car and I was like, try to play gospel music, maybe it'll help. And he turned it on and I felt like I was a demon and someone sprayed me with holy water. It was like, it was so bad. I was like cringing. I was like, turn it off. It's making it worse. And then like I was like praying by myself, but like my mind kept wandering and like not allowing me to fully be present with my prayer. And like, I just was, it was weird. I couldn't explain how I was feeling. And long story short, she helped me break down that situation and like gave me an understanding of like what happened, why it happened, and how I can deal with it in the future. But I just love having answers, you know? And I think if you have a good therapist, their job is to help you understand yourself and the way that you react to things in the world, and how to do a better job of reacting in ways that are beneficial to your life and your mindset, like how to shift your thinking, how to just be the best version of yourself. So I highly recommend that if you're in a relationship and you are dealing with issues in your relationship, you've done the counseling, you've done whatever, that it is important to do individual counseling, because you're not going to be able to get the type of attention that you need in couples therapy. The things that they can help you break down and understand and dive deep into can only be done on a one-on-one type of interaction. But then also there's things that you probably don't even know are affecting you until you dive deeper into things, which takes time. I'm lucky that my first 2 sessions have been so like impactful.
Yeah.
And like, you know, immediate, I guess like it's been immediate solutions for me. It could take a full year for someone to go through therapy to get that type of outcome. But I think the reason why I was able to have that outcome so early on is because I've been aware. I've been, like Dre said in previous episodes, I research things. Like if I'm feeling something or I'm going through something, I'll read books on it. I'll watch documentaries on it. I'll research on Google and find articles. Like I will learn about what I'm dealing with, both from a spiritual aspect and a mental aspect, scientific aspect. Like I will learn, and I'm open. I don't get defensive if someone tells me something about myself. I'm receiving the information and just doing everything I can to be better. And so you have to go into it with that mindset. And if you do, you will be able to have these like, you know, mind-blowing sessions as well. But if you go into it with a mindset that like it's not going to help or nothing's wrong with you, then you're not going to get much out of it. So yeah. I wanted to do this episode specifically for people to know that individual counseling can help your relationship just as much, if not more, than couples counseling, because it helps you as an individual just be a better person to your person. Sometimes both people will need individual. Sometimes it's only one, like in our scenario. But it has been so life-changing, and I'm so excited for this year.
Yeah, I think that, just to reiterate what I said, is it's not even, like, I always knew that therapy as far as helping an individual could be a big help and help them gain perspective. But like I said, you don't realize sometimes how much you're being a sounding board for your partner. And even if you are just listening, you're taking in all that information and raw emotions, and it can get confusing. Like what you should do in certain situations, how your person is feeling in certain situations. Like it can get really, really confusing if you're just getting all the raw thoughts and emotions from your partner. So having somebody that your partner can go to talk about things. And it's like the thing that I love even about Bree's situation is that she's not talking to her therapist about me. Like it's about her. Like it's about her and the things that she's going through, the things that she has gone through, the different experiences that she has. Obviously, I may be mentioned to give some type of context, but it's not a situation to where she went into therapy blaming me or like I'm the topic of conversation as to why she feels the way she feels. And I think that that's important because when she was trying to work through things herself, sometimes it felt like her in solution or her when she looked back at trying to figure out the reason, it would come back to like something that I did and stem from my behavior. But then once she got into therapy and they're focusing on the root issue of things, then she realized where a lot of these things stem from and where they came from. So
which
that's
without
also a
having
benefit.
the education behind things, like I wasn't wrong in saying like, well, you did this and so then I reacted
But it might
this
have been a
way.
trigger.
It's that, yeah, like he was just what he would do or say or whatever was triggering me from something that I didn't even know was like an issue.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that he was a problem, it's that I had a problem before he was even in my life that wasn't properly dealt with. So then when he would say or do certain things that in his mind he's not doing anything, I'm like, well, that was the problem because I couldn't get deeper to the deeper issue to even know that that was a trigger. It's not that he necessarily did something. It's that for me, that's a hard, like, you know, a hard ground to play on because it's shaky and it will break at any moment. So it's just super helpful. And like I said, like I said to her, I was like, if I did therapy like years ago, oh my God, I can't imagine where I would be now. Like, wow, 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 wow.
So what I gotten away from this is you want to start therapy for our kids at 6.
Yep. 6.
They're gonna be like, my mom makes me wear black or white, and that's it. She won't let me wear colors. They're gonna be traumatized.
No,
I get a picture, she won't put it on the fridge.
They're gonna love their monochromatic wardrobe. I'm gonna include like earth tones. They're gonna love it. Don't tease me. They'll love it. If they really don't like it, they can wear color, but I think that they're gonna love it. And you know, once they have a job and they got their own money, they can buy what they want. But while we paying for it, what's the difference if it's pink or a nice shade of cream?
What if they like pink?
We'll do a blush.
Wow.
Blush is pink.
Therapy at 6. It is. No, but that was awesome. Like I said, we encourage everybody to do therapy. Like I said, we'll list Lisa's information below.
Yeah.
And that's going to be something that as we grow with Relationship Restored, we'll add that as having like referred people, therapists, coaches, different things like that you can talk to help just gain perspective, become a better person. Even in your singleness, that's probably the best time to do it, honestly. Mm-hmm. When you're in your singleness, just to prepare for when you do have a partner. But what would you say?
Side note, as I say, my friend Mimi, she's been single for a long time. Like she's in the dating game, and it's hard in these streets. But she started individual therapy, I want to say last year. Well, yeah, it was last year. I don't know how far last year, but even for her as a single woman that's just going through like prioritizing herself, but also dating and being open to meeting someone, she said same thing. It's just been super life-changing. She's learned so much about herself. She's at so much more peace, and like she's just enjoying life way differently than she was before because of the now mindset that she has.
So what things would you say you need to know? Because I know you said, all right, you knew what you want out of a therapist, but what things do you need to know going into therapy? Like, do you need to know exactly like this is what I want to get out of it, or do you come to your therapist and say like this is a situation that I dealt with and I don't know why I felt this way? Like, what do you think is the most?
I think it should almost like a bullet point list of like things that you know would make you a better you. So, right, if it's like I struggle with holding myself accountable to be financially aware, like I don't budget, I just kind of go and live my life, freely, but I know that for the life I want, I can't continue to do that, but I don't know why I struggle so badly with doing it. Or if it's a mindset thing around like your health. If it's, I know I should work out, I know I should eat healthy, but I constantly go into these binge diets and then start them over, and then I'll eat whatever and I'll drink badly and I'll go on vacation, then I come back and it's a cycle that I can't get out of. I just want to live healthier. So it's like just having like bullet points of like the things that you could work on or be better at that would equal a better result in your life for you to be a better version of yourself. And when you are able to tell someone like these are all the things I would like to work on, naturally they're going to slowly dig deeper into other things, and you're going to realize, oh wow, these actually aren't even the core issues that I have. It's way deeper than that. And so I don't think that you have to have all of the answers. I do think that there should be some self-awareness of like, okay, these are the things that I need to work on, especially if you're single and you want to be in a relationship. I think it's important to know the things that you need to work on to be a better individual, to one day be a better partner for someone. So whether that's having anger issues, whether it's you're very defensive, you're overly emotional, and like it's hard to regulate your feelings, like everybody knows at least 1 to 3 things that they could work on to be a better them. And I think as long as you have that awareness, then everything else is going to work itself out.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think that as we bring this to a close, that there are a few things that when you're choosing a therapist, just to keep in mind. As Bree said, coming to it knowing what you want out of therapy and out of a therapist. I would say that therapy is more of a marathon than it is to a sprint. So you want a therapist that's invested in you and your growth. If they're coming back and saying like, seeming like they forget what you last talked about or things like that, like they may not be as invested or what you need from a therapist. Like you shouldn't be repeating the same things that you talked about before, or they shouldn't be like kind of lost on what you guys are talking about. Like you should feel like they're invested in your growth and that they remember everything that you talked about. And it's like each session is compounding on the next session versus just like kind of free for all sessions, like you're talking to a different person every time.
And your therapist should always give you homework after each session, because the real work happens outside of the sessions. The sessions is for there to be moments of clarity, for structure to be had, for you to receive some answers and at least know what to do to prepare between now and the next session. But the work, the like aha moments, comes from the homework that they give you. So I'm just gonna give a prime example. Our last session, I was told that I have like major daddy issues, which I knew about, but I thought were like resolved, I guess. But she explained to me why that is not the case, and that there technically isn't such a thing as like resolving or having closure from something that happened to you. It's something that happened that will continue to shape you and be a part of your life forever and always. So when she explained that, that made me feel a little more like normal, like, oh, okay, that makes
That's
total
interesting.
sense.
So it's kind of like, that's more like, I guess, if you're baking a cookie, what's in the dough versus like once the cookie is done and something being on top of it and you brush it off. Like one thing is something that's like part of the
Ooh.
dough. So it's like you can't take it out because it kind of shapes who you are and makes it chocolate chip or makes it oatmeal or makes it sugar. But if the cookie is done and something comes on top of it, then that's something that you can kind of like wipe off.
Yeah.
For it.
And obviously your daddy is a big part of your ingredients.
Yeah, so it's
you
like
can't
that's
wipe
not
that part off.
That's not like a thing to where it's like, oh, I got daddy issues, let me figure out how to scrape. No, it's like you are who you are.
Yes.
Because of this, how that happened.
Yeah, and it made me not feel like
Saving
a
that for my
victim
book.
anymore, because when she said that and she was like, you are who you are today, not in spite of your father, but because of your father. And I was like, how, Lisa? And she was like, well, because think about it. She said, if your father, knowing that he had drug addiction and was an alcoholic, if he was a part of your life growing up, you would not be who you are today. You wouldn't be this strong, independent woman. You would have grown up in a very broken home. You probably would have seen your mom be manipulated and abused, and that some of that abuse could have happened to you. Like, you would not be who you are today. So even though you have daddy issues, which quote unquote just means you're affected by the lack of or presence of your father, doesn't mean that you are not a fully capable woman and that those issues can't be made for positive things. Like, so when she explained it to me, I was like, this makes so much sense. And at first, when she mentioned daddy issues, I was like, dang, I thought that I had worked through those things and that daddy issues wouldn't even be a topic of discussion for us, because I thought I dealt with it with other therapists. And she was like, no, sweetie, it's not something that just goes away. Like, it's going to forever be something. The thing is, we need to figure out how to make sure that moving forward, you don't allow it to affect you in a negative way. And so, long story short, the homework that she gave me was to write a letter to my dad. And she was like, you're not going to give it to him or anything like that. It's more for you to be able to mentally and emotionally move on from the hurt that was caused. And instead of getting closure or ending the book or closing the book, it's more of a way for you to be aware that, hey, this thing affects me in this way, but at least knowing and feeling comfortable with how it affects me. And so the letter is supposed to tell my dad about the woman that I am and essentially like what he's missed. So what he didn't get to see, what he didn't get to experience, and then to introduce him to Dre and like explain like who my husband is and like my new in-laws and the family that I now have through Dre. Tell them about my friends and like where I live and what my future looks like and what I'm excited for and what I want my family to look like, and essentially just getting all that out, because what happens is through writing and your brain reading the words that you're writing, it kind of creates like an experience. And so after I do this, even though it's something that's so simple, that's going to take a little bit of time and a little bit of effort, I'll be able to move forward with a lot more clarity and peace when it comes to him. Even though he's not reading the letter, nothing's going to come from the letter. Just getting those things out, and my brain and my emotions and all of me being able to be on the same page with how I feel about my dad not being here is going to allow me to have a better sense of freedom when I'm dealing with men, because a lot of the daddy issues stem from how I react to men. Like if I feel slighted by a man, if I feel that he doesn't see my value, it could be a client, it could be a friend, it could be a family member, it could be Dre, whoever, I react in a way that I don't normally understand because it's something that I was just kind of built to do due to the lack of my father being there and the way that I look at him and the relationship with men in general. So it's going to help me react in a more positive way and understand why I feel that way and take it, understand it, receive it, and then give a better reaction versus having breakdowns like I did.
Yeah, literally sometimes her heart and mind, and when I say heart, it's like more emotions, be like at war, to where like mentally she's like in one space and feels and thinking this should be what she feels, but her emotions are pulling her in the other direction. But as we end this is exactly what I said, what Bree is talking about with the homework is your therapist is like, here's your hammer, here's your nails, here's your wood, but you still have to go home and repair your roof. I'm not doing it for you. Here are the tools, repair it. So if you're not willing to put in the work to do it once you get home, you're still going to come back to that therapy session with a hole in your roof, so you need to do the work outside of it, and meet your therapist halfway, because that's what's ultimately going to make it sustainable, is you being able to operate in those environments and you being able to correct your way of thinking and all that stuff yourself when you're alone, versus with having your therapist present. So we appreciate you guys for tuning into this video. We hope it was helpful. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at SJ Smith, at Brianna Ponte, and at Relationship Restored. And make sure you write into us and let us know if there's anything you want us to talk about, whether it's about waiting for marriage or anything relationship wise. We appreciate you guys, especially those who waited to the end. That means you really love us a lot and you love this conversation. So definitely subscribe, like, leave us a review on podcasts. We truly appreciate everybody who tunes in to everything that we're doing. And we are excited to keep it going. Peace.